Today's episode of Off the Timeline is titled, What If Cam Newton Went to Miami? The Alternate History That Changed College Football. January 2011. Cam Newton stands on the national championship stage holding the crystal football. But he isn't wearing Auburn colors, he's wearing Miami colors. And in this alternate history, that changes college football forever because Miami doesn't just become relevant, they become the first modern super villain program. The kind of team that dominates headlines, terrifies boosters, changes recruiting forever, and forces every major power to evolve or be left behind. Within 3 years, Texas becomes a football corporation, Ohio State becomes a science lab, Oregon loses control of the revolution it started, and the SEC launches a race to the top that reshapes the entire sport. And honestly, the craziest part is how real this actually feels. This is the alternate history of the Miami dynasty that broke college football. First, let's set the table for the perfect storm. By 2009, college football is already changing. Oregon was making speed football cool. Recruiting was becoming national. YouTube highlights mattered. ESPN wanted larger personalities, and traditional powers were quietly panicking. At the same time, the U had become irrelevant, which felt impossible if you remembered early 2000s Miami. Back then, Miami felt larger than football itself, with NFL talent, intimidation, and celebrity energy. But by the late 2000s, that aura was gone, and Miami boosters knew something terrifying. If they didn't become nationally relevant again soon, they might never matter again. Then, Cam Newton becomes available in this alternate universe, and suddenly, Miami sees an opportunity to skip the rebuild entirely. And that sets the table for why Cam to Miami makes too much sense. This is what makes this universe so fascinating. Cam Newton at Miami doesn't feel random. It feels weirdly inevitable. Think about it. Charisma, controversy, size, speed, and superstar aura. Combine that with South Beach, celebrity culture, and early Twitter era hype. Overnight, Miami becomes the largest show in college football. Not because people love them, but because people can't stop watching them. And that sets the table for the media going crazy. And this is where the timeline really changes because ESPN immediately realizes Miami ratings are increasing. Every game becomes an event. Every celebration becomes controversy. Every Cam Newton interview becomes content. Older fans despise it. Younger fans love it. Message boards become battlegrounds. And suddenly, college football starts rewarding attention as much as it does winning. That changes the entire sport. And that sets a table for Oregon realizing what it created. Oregon watches this unfold in horror because Oregon thought they were the ones building the future with fast offense, flashy branding, and national identity. But Miami accidentally discovers something even larger, celebrity football. Oregon created the blueprint, Miami strengthened it. And now every major program starts chasing relevance instead of tradition. And that sets the table for Texas panicking. No school reacts harder than Texas. Remember, after 2009, Texas just got destroyed by Alabama in the national championship. Now Miami owns the headlines. Oregon owns the internet. And Texas boosters become convinced the sport is changing underneath them. That's when they quietly begin pursuing Urban Meyer. Not because Mac Brown failed, because Texas believes college football is changing underneath their feet, and they refuse to lose ground. And that sets the table for Ohio State changing everything. For years, critics kept saying Ohio State was too slow, outdated, and couldn't keep up with SEC speed. Then Ohio State watches Miami become a media empire, Oregon modernize offense, and Texas industrializing recruiting. And they panic. So they aggressively pursue Chip Kelly. Now imagine, Chip Kelly offense with Ohio State athletes and resources. At this point, college football officially stops feeling normal. And that sets the table for the 2010 season. Miami instantly becomes the most unliked but watched team in America. Cam Newton looks unstoppable. Road crowds become vicious. Every touchdown celebration becomes a national debate, and ESPN loves it because ratings are growing. Meanwhile, Oregon keeps scoring 50 points. Texas starts building a recruiting machine. Ohio State installs warp speed offense. And throughout the SEC, panic spreads because now the conference feels challenged culturally for the first time in years. And that sets the table for the Saban response. At first, Nick Saban dismisses all of it. Too flashy, too emotional, too reckless. Then Miami starts taking recruits, Texas starts flashing money, and Ohio State modernizes overnight. And then Nick Saban realizes something terrifying. If Alabama doesn't evolve, they get left behind. So in this universe, Alabama modernizes even faster. Earlier groups of analysts, earlier offensive innovation, earlier sports science. The SEC race to the top accelerates years ahead of schedule. And that sets the table for the moment that defines the era. It's November 2010. Miami versus Virginia Tech. College game day in South Beach. Massive ratings. Midway through the third quarter, Miami runs a fake kneel down into a T touchdown pass. The internet goes crazy. Traditional fans call it disrespectful. Miami fans love it. ESPN debates it for an entire week. And suddenly, that play becomes symbolic of the entire era. Because now college football isn't about winning, it's about attention. And that sets the table for the national championship. Miami storms into the title game, and now the country feels completely divided. Some fans believe Miami is saving college football. Others believe they're destroying it, which only helps get even more ratings. Then Miami faces Alabama, old power versus a new chaos. And after 4 hours of absolute chaos, Miami wins the national championship. Cam Newton becomes a legend, and overnight, college football changes forever. And that sets the table for the aftermath. After Miami wins, recruiting becomes even more national. Branding becomes everything. Social media becomes mandatory. TV gains more power, and conference paranoia increases substantially. And every major program starts chasing relevance instead of identity. And that's the real impact of this alternate history. Miami didn't just win a title, they accelerated the future of college football by years. And maybe that's why this alternate history feels so compelling. Because the late 2000s already had all the ingredients: money, branding, speed, media obsession, recruiting, battles, and celebrity culture. This timeline didn't invent modern college football, it just got there faster. And honestly, that might have been enough to change everything. And if you enjoyed this alternate history and want more college football universes like this, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next timeline.